I'll be moving on to Mr. Tanmay, where I'll try to understand now that we know like what kind of roles, designations, a typical day, various certification, technical skills, everything we got a awareness. But in a day, like what exactly a HR do? Because there are a lot of imagination in my mind, like what exactly he does. Because outside people, they think, okay, he's somebody who is not even responding to my resume. He's not somebody after interview, he's not even calling me. That is my complaint all the time. So typically a day in HR life or in a month in a HR life, what really happens?
Okay. See, we have to divide this particular dilemma into two parts. One is what type of evaluation of organization HR is representing, and second is at what type of level and responsibility the person is really responsible for. Now, if I let me take an example, let's say somebody into startup kind of scenario. Okay. The typical problem with Indian startups is founders are thinking they know HR better than any other HR professional. That's the first thing to start with. Most of the places they think, hey, that's fine. We know we are, and especially in the tech-based startups, this is a first of all, this is a myth that we know better than anybody else. We know the technical skills which are required. We know how to have people on board, and we know how to engage them well. That's the one of the biggest myth which most of the startups are having it. So, unfortunately. This is something which a lot of people are learning after the moment this particular startup is getting scaling up. At that time, they are actually coming across the real myth that it's not only about the representation or about who is better in terms of understanding the people management. It's not only about it. There are a lot of other nitty-gritties which needs to be taken care. So typical HR person in startup scenario, if especially unfortunately, fortunately person is the beginner in let's say that person is the first person in HR in that particular setup. So obviously anything and everything will come in that particular person's shoulders, and there is no any scope for him or her to let's say whether this is responsible for me or not. Okay, so this is a very typical, very highly you can't predict what will happen in this startup kind of roles, even irrespective of whatever level the person has joined in HR, and anything and everything that person is responsible. So it's not only one domain. There is nothing called generalist, specialist, all these type of things. It's good to have in some other kind of scenario. Everything and anything, buck will stop at this, and person should be responsible. Person should be absolutely anticipating any time founder might be telling boss, I was handling much better than you when you before you came on board. So at that time the buck might stop at the person. So little bit tricky, very very highly I can say very agility should be there, and especially person should be responsible in terms of acting very fast compared to other places. Let's say scenario of turnaround kind of scenarios. Okay, there are some organization where there is a either pivot is happening, or let's say overall strategy is getting changed, or there is a turnaround which needs to be done as a part of the overall strategy. Now the moment somebody is being part of that particular HR domain, this will be very very little bit strategic in nature. It will not be only limited with let's say only hiring, or let's say how to optimize the manpower. It will be more, let's say the involvement will be very very high in terms of all types of strategic meetings, because the moment you have to go for turnaround, things will go revolve around, hovering around to the people part of it by default. So this is something which is a little bit tricky according to me. If you take the example of, let's say, accelerating growth kind of scenario where organization is growing very fast, again, this is a very tricky part for HR, because people will be ending up with more into the transactional side of it. Okay, in terms of getting unfortunately, there is a belief that if you are having more manpower in place, there will be more productivity, and slowly, gradually, everybody will come to know this is something which is a minimum threshold which is going to help, but ultimately at the end of that, it's not going to be the truth. Beyond a specific you are surpassing the datum point, it's not going to be truth. If you are part of realignment kind of scenario, again, it is more about the business orientation. Okay, you should be having a business acumen. Okay, so those things will be.
Sorry to interrupt, Tanmay. Like, I'll just put it in a different way. Like, a typical day, how does it look like? Like, what are all the activities you do? Are you putting any checklist of the activities, meetings, calendars? How a HR role looks like in a typical day is what I'm trying to understand
GS,
from
the
you
thing is
because.
that GS, why I gave this background, because there is a problem. This is an ocean kind of question which we are putting across. Okay, what we are supposed to do. The problem is that depending on nature of role, these things will be dependent on. I have seen those type of senior level professionals who are having entire calendar being blocked for entire day. They are doing multiple meetings, But unfortunately, fortunately, we are not ending up with any results. Okay, those type of extensive kind of spectrum of things are also available. So at the very initial level, let's say it's a beginning of the level. Obviously, things will be there will be a hardcore to do list. Okay, and a lot of things will be transactional in nature, and obviously, person will be more responsible in terms of on time in full execution which needs to be done. So at that time it will be very transactional, and it will be very sometimes people might be thinking it's repetitive in nature. If organization is having evolution of having AI machine learning in place, so obviously some of the tasks will be automated. So there will be some breathing time in terms of engaging with the customer and engaging with your internal customers or internal stakeholders. That's a typical thing. Suppose you are at a mid level. Okay, obviously your things will be little bit changed. You will not be occupied into the transactional things, but yes, lot of planning part will come into picture, lot of stakeholder meetings will come into picture, and there has to be an association with the final outcome. It's not about you are creating meetings after meeting and you are not able to take a decision. And if you talk about the, let's say, in terms of the senior level people, it is more about the engagement in terms of the high level, in terms of what types of meetings, what type of strategy things where you are getting involved. Manpower budgeting is something which everybody is talking from starting at entry level till top level. But obviously, the degree of intensity, the degree of involvement, and the type of inputs, it will varies from circumstances to circumstances. So why I started with the different organization, because obviously today startup level guy in HR will be having a very different day compared to accelerated growth organization, or let's say realignment scenario, or let's say completely steady growth. There are organizations which are steady growth kind of evolved. Okay, already have very mature practices over there. You don't require to worry about it. There is a separate segregation. There is a separate center of excellence. There is a separate HRBP function. There is a separate, you can say, IR, kind of scenario, depending on nature of industry. And also there is a separate service delivery team. Over there, the problem is that the typical day will be, you will not be completely occupied throughout the day with a lot of tasks. You will be more focusing on how you are going to collaborate with the other functions, which will be making more sense. Okay, so those meetings or those type of engagement will be very limited in terms of collaboration, and you have to ensure that there is an overall alignment which is coming. Now, in those type of scenarios, you may not be completely, lot of things are getting outsourced. Lot of things are being helped with the external partners or external, let's say, boutique firms, and they are also coming into picture. A lot of consultants are also coming into picture when you are having a steady growth scenario. So at that time, the lot of things which you have to put across. Okay, a lot of things you have to, I'm sorry to say, but it's you have to decorate and you have to put across your visibility in those type of scenarios. Even though you are working, you might be working more hard in the let's say startup scenario or the let's say turnaround scenario, but yeah, your visibility will be becoming more crucial when you are becoming part of steady growth. So I think there is nothing called typical day in an HR. I think my co-panelists have already said in the beginning. Okay, it's there is any surprise element come into picture, but yeah, definitely there is always a require. It is always advisable to have a organized way of working. I'm not talking about hardcore to make a to-do list and you have to go for it, because that's something which is a transactional part of it. It's not about number of tasks which you are going to accomplish in a day of in the end of the day. It's about the 2 or 3 focus area where if you are able to do it, and if you are having some conclusion, okay, instead of just hovering around again and again or entire week, okay, it's better to have a completion of some of the things. Obviously there will be few, depending on the level of the this thing professional, the some of the decisions will elongate. It will not be able to close it in day or two or in within weeks time also. So based on the role, the type of organization evolution, and especially the HR maturity. Okay, the HR maturity is going to be extremely important. Okay, it's going to be very crucial, and again, it varies from industry to industry. So I would like to say, I want to put it in a nutshell. It's all depends on what type of one has to be very careful in which type of evaluation of organization one has joined. Okay, today if I've not been having a neck of working in a startup, if I always worked into steady growth or I always worked into accelerated growth kind of organization, it will be little bit difficult to get adjusted into that part, because over there you might be used to work in a specific, let's say, appointments. People are blocking the appointment. You are going to meet with you and connect and all these things. Suddenly, founder will call you and he will say, you have to go to do XYZ things. Or there will be some contingency which will be absolutely unpredictable. Okay, there is no any settling time, especially if suppose somebody is working in a PE. I'm giving another example. Let's say somebody is working in a private equity firm backed firms. Okay, there the HR is absolutely different. Okay, I can tell you I have seen the scenarios where there are organizations where HR does not require to even present anything, even for entire 1 year, 2 year, people are floating in the system just like that. And there are extremities in the another side of scenario where you are working in a private equity firm. Okay, you will be asked to present your plan versus execution. Within 6 months, you have to present 3 to 4 months, 4 times. It's very, very uncommon
Mm-hmm.
actually. So that's why
Okay.
I started in discussion. It's solely depend on the which type of life cycle one has joined. And second is HR maturity cycle is also equally important. Okay, if somebody who has been very, very accustomed with the set of the things, the moment that person is going into turnaround situation, it's going to be a havoc. Okay, person has to really adapt very well in terms of the let's say timelines, in terms of impact of your interventions, as well as what type of finally legacy you are going to put across. These three things are going to become extremely crucial. So this is something which I can't chart out this, because this is not like a salesperson's day
Ha,
in
ha, ha.
life.
I
There are many
understand
tasks
it's a
which
very, very
needs to be done.
subjective, subjective
Yeah,
role. Each industry demands different thing. Like
yeah,
IT, BPO, or e-commerce will have a different HR altogether. It's not a common role everybody.
absolutely.
Maybe I'll put it a use case based thing where typically I'm a team lead HR or assistant manager HR, or let's say I'm a manager HR, but I'm aiming at a CHRO role, VP HR, or head of HR kind of a role. So what exactly the career planning I must do to get elevated to a VP HR? Because not everybody can become a AGM, DGM, VP, even CHRO or group CHRO for that matter, right? So there are a lot of confusion that what exactly a VP HR role demands from an individual contributor or a manager HR. Those kind of confusions are there. So since you are already executing a role in a VP HR, what could be your advice to a little junior, like let's say 8 years, 5 years, 10 years guy who's handling a HR manager role? What is your checklist or what advice you will give for those people who wants to get into a leadership kind of a role?
See, there might be point of difference, but I can share my own practitioner's view, what has worked, and what I have seen it into some of my colleagues also. I personally believe that leadership role in HR will only come when somebody has been exposed with all the entire spectrum at some point of time. Person does
Agree.
not require to be expert into each and every subdomains of HR, but person must have gone through those nuances at some point of time in their career will be helpful. I'll tell you from where I'm coming. Suppose, let's say, if I'm taking a non-tech scenario right now, just for giving an example point of view. Okay, somebody is not into non-tech. Okay, is into non-tech kind of industry or the sector. If you're not been to, let's say, some point of time, if you're not been to manufacturing or if you're not handle ER, okay, you can't expect that person to become CHR or VPHR. I can guarantee you. Because
Mm.
if you have not handled compliances, if you are not been into the other side of the table and some of the other roles, suppose sometimes people are telling L&D is something, it's like a completely independent window altogether. There will be specialized and they will be only playing their own role. Honestly speaking, tomorrow if you are into coming into this role, you should be exposed with entire life cycle of people. You might be having one or two. It's like a T-shaped scenario. What it's a very famous model. You should be having one or two doing things where you should be extremely good in terms of your domain expertise, but obviously you should be having good amount of exposure. And honestly speaking, any crash course, CHRO of tomorrow, CHRO of the year, and all these things, whatever certifications we have, honestly speaking,
Mm.
they might be enabler in terms of they might be giving you some of the skill sets for your own enhancement, but it's not going to be
Okay.
guarantee you that you will become a that CHR or you become that type of higher this thing. Because the problem is that if it's like a crash course. Sometimes people are thinking if I will do
Mm.
this crash course, I will be able to go for it. The moment
Mm.
you go into leadership roles, you will be having a kind of people of already having 8 to 15 years of experience who are already domain expertise in that specific HR domain. If you're not able to give them direction, okay, how
Mm.
can you give direction? Suppose, let's say, if I've never handled comp and ban in my life, okay, I can't give
Mm.
direction to any CNB specialist in my team. Let's say somebody who might be going to report to me. Okay, I should be
Mm.
having awareness. Either some point of time I should have handled. I'm not telling person should be completely expert in that. This is one
Mm.
thing. Second is, suppose, let's say somebody really wants to grow in the career, and if somebody is having really aspiration to become going to leadership HR role, I personally believe it's better to have a internal, whichever stint you guys are doing it, you should be absolutely going whenever there is a cross-functional project, wherever there is an opportunity to have a rotational kind of profile, definitely it's not going to be easy. Okay, it's not going to be easy to go for it. But if you are really having aspiration, it's better to take a in-house roles as and when it is coming. Take it as a challenge. You can take it for 1.5 years. You can have that type of stint. You can again go back to some other role. Okay, but at the end of the day, if you are not done at least 5 out of 6 critical roles which are part of the HR, it will be difficult for, especially, first of all, there has to be credibility which needs to be built up. Okay, somebody who has never done TA in their life, somebody has not ever done CNB in life, and if that person is aspiring, yeah, I will become, let's say, leadership role in HR, it will be difficult. Well, there will be some exceptions. There are always exceptions in every domain, but it will be difficult for someone to go for that particular thing. That's my personal point of view. So I think this cross-functional projects, as and when it is possible to get involved into any the business transformation projects, and also as and when getting an opportunity to have you have a wider spectrum of getting a varieties of roles at some point of time, it's better to go for it. Then only people will be having a credibility and your leadership team will take bet for it. There is nothing called people are always ready for this role. If you are having readiness for 70-75% role, there are organizations who are ready to take bet on you. But for provided you have done really substantial work on this. I've seen, sorry to say that I've seen a lot of people who are having a specific range of experience. They might have done a fantastic job in some specific subdomain of this thing, HR, and then they are trying to aspire to become like a head of HR kind of role. Unfortunately, because you are not having exposure to other roles, it will be difficult to handle those type of people. It's not that people are going to challenge you, but ultimately, at a leadership role, you are supposed to give direction to the people. Now, to give the direction, you should have done work some point of time. That's a nutshell submission from my side.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think that will be a great learning for somebody who's at their midpoint of career on what role I have to take and getting to a leadership role, all that. Because especially, I mean, a lot of people jump into businesses or entrepreneurial journey after 10 years, 15 years, where they start manpower agencies or become a coach or becoming multiple corporate trainers, multiple other roles. But it's really important to understand that what all roles available, because today's scenario demands for a lot of other things from let's say a group CHRO kind of a model or head of HR, director HR, multiple other things where if I look at the LinkedIn JD, it gives like a essay type of job description where it starts from TA to PMS to whatnot. Like even if he works 24 hours, it will not be end. And that is the kind of scary JDs we can see from LinkedIn. So just wanted to understand. I think it's a super insight where you have given those kind of knowledge.